Beneath the surface of ancient soil, archaeologists have uncovered stories not of peaceful coexistence, but of broken skulls, punctured bones, and mass graves. These silent remains whisper tales of fear, survival, and deadly encounters that began long before recorded history. What makes this fossil chilling are two tiny puncture holes on the skull. Researchers say these holes match the spacing of a leopard's lower canines, suggesting this child was snatched and dragged into a tree to be attended just as leopards do today. Dr. C.K. Brain, a pioneer in African paleoanthropology, confirmed in the 1970s that this wasn't just a coincidence. It was a scene of ancient tragedy, frozen in fossilized time. A woman, pregnant at the time, appeared to have had her hands tied before she was killed. There were no graves, no ritual burials, just raw, exposed death. Go back further to 13,400 years ago, and you will find Jewel Sahaba in present-day Sudan, one of the world's oldest known cemeteries, marred by mass violence. She discovered more than 100 previously undocumented wounds, some healed, some fresh. This suggested not a one-time massacre, but a community that lived under constant threat. The settlement had a protective ditch, indicating they lived under threat, but even that wasn't enough. Whether driven by revenge, resource competition, or social dominance, the attackers unleashed total destruction. The scale of the massacre shows how warfare evolved into something systematic, planned, executed, and horrifyingly effective. These people endured raids, survived attacks, only to face death in the next wave. This individual likely died in agony from what we now treat at a dentist's office. Such suffering wasn't rare. In East Africa, a 1.7 million-year-old woman, catalogued as KNMO 1808, died from vitamin A poisoning, likely from consuming animal liver in excess. Her bones showed abnormal growths, her pain etched into her skeleton. 9 young adults, mostly men and 1 woman, lay in a pit, limbs tangled, bodies carelessly dumped. They reveal a world where survival meant more than just outrunning predators. It meant facing death in all its brutal forms. From the sky, from a rival tribe, from within the body, or even from your own kind. Through each discovery, we piece together a past that's as terrifying as it is deeply human. And killed in what may be the earliest example of systematic execution in human history. The weapons have changed, but the reasons, the desperation, the fear, the desire for control remain hauntingly familiar. It's about how we lived. It's about the children who ran from leopards, the villagers who defended their homes, the communities who buried their wounded. But history carved in stone and bone tells a messier story, one where cruelty walks hand in hand with compassion. And in their survival, in their courage, and even in their tragedy, we find ourselves. Because no matter how far we've come, their journey is our own. The ancient past isn't dead, it lives on in us. Where death came in many forms, but always reminded us of what it meant to be human. And the captives who faced execution with no hope of mercy, these stories, carved into bone and preserved by time, connect us across millennia. Sometimes the most revealing stories are the quietest. At Shinadar Cave in Iraq, a 45,000-year-old Neanderthal skeleton known as Shinadar I tells a very different tale. This man had suffered terrible injuries, a crushed skull, a missing arm, and blindness in one eye. He also had severe arthritis, and yet he lived for years after these injuries. How someone cared for him. This was evidence not just of survival, but of compassion. His burial was careful, deliberate, a sign that even in ancient times, humans felt the need to honor the dead. These weren't spontaneous murders. They required planning, social organization, and a chilling sense of order. This site shows that by the dawn of agriculture, humans had already developed the means not just to survive, but to control, punish, and exterminate with chilling efficiency. But this wasn't a chaotic slaughter. Every skull showed precision trauma blows to the back of the head. These people were executed one by one, likely bound or kneeling. The findings challenge the idea that organized violence is a modern phenomenon. These ancient communities were trapped in a cycle of relentless brutality. It's likely driven by climate shifts and shrinking resources at the end of the Ice Age, discovered in the 1960s during preparations for a dam project. The site contains 61 skeletons, men, women, and children, many with broken bones, embedded projectiles, and fractured skulls. In present-day South Dakota, along the banks of the Missouri River, lies one of the most horrific scenes of prehistoric violence ever found, the Crow Creek Massacre. Around 1325 CE, this fortified village of the initial coalescent culture, ancestors of the Arikara people, was wiped out in a single attack. When archaeologists excavated the site in 1978, they uncovered at least 486 mutilated bodies. At first, archaeologist Fred Wendorf believed these people had died in a single, devastating attack. Dr. Marta Lahr, who led the research, described the violence as methodical and savage. This discovery shattered the long-held belief that warfare only began with farming societies. These hunter-gatherers had no crops, no cities, yet they killed with shocking coordination.
Ow!
Long before humans became hunters, we were the hunted. Another posits that random encounters between nomadic groups often turn deadly. Whatever the cause, the message is clear. Humans didn't need complex societies to commit organized acts of violence. It may have always been part of who we are. For millions of years, our ancestors lived in the shadows, fearing the rustle in the bushes, the glint of fangs in the night, and the predators that stalked them from both land and sky. Around 10,000 years ago, evidence reveals a startling new pattern: deliberate, brutal violence between human beings. One of the clearest windows into this dark transformation lies in Ture, Kenya, near the shores of an ancient lake. Here, archaeologists unearthed 27 skeletons, men, women, and children, some still holding stone tools. But this was no peaceful settlement. 10 of these bodies showed undeniable signs of violence: crushed skulls, broken limbs, and projectile points embedded in bone. One of the oldest signs of this predatory world comes from South Africa, where a 1.5 million-year-old skullcap of a juvenile Paranthropus robustus known as specimen K54 was unearthed. But danger didn't only come from below. Another ancient victim, known as the Tong Child, a 3-year-old Australopithecus africanus, met a terrifying fate around 2.3 million years ago. Found in South Africa, this child's skull bore telltale puncture marks and fractures similar to modern monkeys hunted by eagles. That's right, this toddler was likely snatched by a massive bird of prey, killed, and carried off from above. These deadly encounters with nature shaped the way early humans evolved, developing stronger communities, better tools, and a heightened awareness of danger. As humanity rose up the food chain, our greatest threat shifted from beasts to each other. One man had an obsidian blade lodged in his skull. So why did this happen? One theory suggests competition over vital resources, fresh water and fertile land. But Natarik is just one tragic chapter. However, a more recent study in 2021 by Dr. Isabel Krevkor painted a darker picture. Fast forward several millennia and thousands of miles to North America, and the story repeats itself. The brutality was beyond comprehension. Skulls were scalped, limbs severed, and bodies dismembered. Men, women, and children all fell victim. Europe, too, has its own haunting chapter. In Halberstadt, Germany, dating back 7,000 years to the early Neolithic period, archaeologists discovered a mass grave unlike any other. Isotope analysis revealed they weren't local. They had been brought to Halberstadt, possibly as prisoners, yet not all prehistoric death came from warfare or murder. Another tragic case comes from Zambia, where a 400,000-year-old Homo heidelbergensis skull was found with severe dental disease cavities, abscesses, and gum decay. These aren't just bones, they're biographies. They tell of fear, endurance, kindness, and cruelty. What do these ancient deaths teach us? That violence, compassion, rivalry, and community are not modern inventions. They are ancient traits, deeply rooted in our DNA. The story of human violence isn't just about how we died. We like to think of progress as a straight line from primitive to civilized, from chaos to order. In the end, our ancestors' stories are not just about how they died, but how they endured.